ठीक है, ब्राट साहब, comfortable everything?
we're okay, good.
What do you ask? Your voice.
Voice is okay.
ठीक है, ब्राट साहब, comfortable everything?
Everything is okay, good.
You ask. Your voice.
Voice ठीक है मेरी. I hope it is okay.
Yeah, absolutely, everything is visible.
But I'm just generally supposed to talk on the topic and something in our praise as vote of thanks.
And then probably the starting part where you can tell how the elections are scheduled to take place and how you are contemplating and what is the software agency. And maybe the intricate details as to what is the software agency, what are they, how have they planned to conduct the election, step by step kind of a procedure.
I'll just speak briefly.
Adi, please.
Liberty सिर्फ तेनू है भरा नु छोटे नु.
Acha, in such short time.
Put the gun on me on such a short period, but anything for you always.
You know, every institution, it has such people who stand up anytime, anywhere.
Always we are a team.
थोड़ी आवाज थोड़ी सी कट रही है, मतलब कट भी रही है तो लो, it is very low.
ये आवाज तो इस तरह मैं फिर मैं वो आईपॉड पे तो जानबूझ के वो लाया हा अपना वायर्ड ते बैठा मैं नेक्स्ट टू फाइबर है.
It is very low, आवाज बहुत लो आ रही है, क्लैरिटी नहीं आ रही.
चाहिए तो नहीं.
लो है बहुत ज्यादा. ਹੁਣ ਬੋਲਿਓ, ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਤਾਰ ਤਾ.
ਹੁਣ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਥੋੜਾ ਨੇੜੇ ਲਿਆਓ.
ਬੈਟਰ
ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੂੰ ਨੇੜੇ ਲਿਆਓ, ਕੋਈ ਟੇਬਲ ਪਲੇਸ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ.
ਮੈਂ ਜੋ ਫਾਈਬਰ ਦੇ ਨੇੜੇ ਬੈਠਾ ਹਾਂ. ਮੇਰਾ ਗੋਲਡ ਪਲਾਨ ਹੈ 300 Mbps ਵਾਲਾ.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So you're surprised? You thought I was a guy, right?
No, of course not.
Okay.
Mr. Harpreet Singh Brad, I'd sent you the introduction on the email, so he's also there.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Purvi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
We really we feel proud. The people from Indian background are doing so well, and they are such great achievers.
Yeah, I guess so.
It makes us feel really good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Purvi, I'll be referring to.
Call me Purvi. That's fine. Just call me Purvi. That's fine. Yeah.
So, Purvi, I'll be referring to 5 questions. So I'll just tell you the questions before we start.
Sure.
And so firstly, I'll be asking as to, by online elections, do you also mean elections conducted through mobile softwares?
Yeah.
And what are the second question being, what are the problems that have been occurred due to online voting anywhere in the world, including Estonia, of course?
Yeah.
And next, whether to hold online elections or not, what points should an institution take into consideration?
Mm-hmm.
And fourth, as to how does an online election breach occur?
Mm-hmm.
And fifthly, in the present times, what other means do you suggest, or what if online election has to be conducted, according to you, what all precautions have to be taken?
Okay. Okay. Sure. You want to start? You want me to just answer?
No, I'll just start. Give the introduction.
Okay. Sure.
So, Mr. Brad, should I start, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, hello everybody. We welcome today Dr. Purvi Vora, Dr. Purvi Vora is a professor at the Department of Computer Science, School of Engineering and Applied Science, the George Washington University, Washington, D.C., USA, with her areas of expertise being computer science, computer security and information assurance, and medical imaging. She has remained the visiting associate professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and a lecturer at the IIT Delhi. Professor Purvi Vora and a research group conduct research on problems in the general areas of electronic security and privacy and imaging. Their recent projects in security and privacy have focused on end-to-end independently verifiable voting systems where voters can verify election outcome without being required to trust election officials or voting system software, privacy as a signaling problem in auctions, and the cryptanalysis of entries in the SHA-3 competition. In imaging, they are currently exploring the use of higher level information in medical atlases to improve tomographic reconstructions. So we'll just, firstly, I'll be putting the question to Mr. Harpreet Singh Brad, who is also the member of the election committee of the Bar Council. Mr. Brad, if you could just highlight as to what the Bar Council is currently contemplating regarding the online elections of the different bar associations, please.
First of all, I greet Purvi Vora, such eminence with us today. I feel privileged being in the discourse on this online elections and the ways and means how to go about it and how to have the complete efficacious and transparent manner to hold such elections. Purvi, we are a statutory organization. We, as a statutory body, we also have the power to regulate and ensure the free and transparent elections in the bar association across Punjab, Haryana, and Chandigarh on one day. We have the rules of bar association election rules 2009 and then 2015. So the main gist of these rules is one bar and one vote, and the voting should take place on the same day. So now what we are facing is, because of the occurrence of the COVID-19, the election, the tenures are, we hold election on the first Friday of the April. So these are annual elections. All the bar association goes to election on first Friday of the April, and we regulate that election in case of any dispute. So now what has happened? It is a peculiar situation arisen in our area and under our domain as a statutory body. So now the tenure of those bar associations have finished in April 2020. Because of the occurrence of the pandemic, the situation is still dynamic, and those who have been elected for 1 year, they are still continuing by the virtue of their offices. But we are getting a lot of complaints and applications that few of the candidates who are again contesting and their tenure has ended. But so we, as a body, in our wisdom, in our humble way, we proposed to hold these election and online elections. This would be the first bar council in the entire country to hold online elections. So what are our concerns are? Our concerns are the efficacy of the online elections, as we have seen in the Estonia and also the Rotary International, which is the largest uh, organization in the world. They hold their elections on only through online mode. So, given like the present scenario, the situation of COVID is still dynamic. So, we are faced with such a situation. We have to keep our democratic process alive and sustain it, and also to have an election which is efficacious and which has a level playing field, and it also maintains the secrecy of vote, because in Indian election system, one thing is very vital for every transparent and free election is the secrecy of voting. So the agency we had been able to project it, and they have been able to kind of give us we had mock runs. So we would like to have your view because you are the expert on this subject. So my request you to is how the online elections are going to impact the democratic process vis-a-vis the every person's right to have a level playing field. This is my question to you.
Mr. Brad, if I could just come back to you and ask you as to how this, how the elections are proposed to occur, as to how the mobile software is going to function.
We have a mobile software. The mobile software will send a link to every voter. We have registered voters, and their identification is their footprints are in the shape of enrollment number. It is an individual enrollment number for everyone. So every voter has one particular enrollment number. So the link would be sent to the registered mobile number. They have to enter their enrollment number. Then they will get a OTP. OTP is only valid for like 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Within that period, the mobile screens or will have their uh, the ballot paper, the candidates. Then that person, the voter, will cast their vote, and the vote will be counted. This is the process we are doing, and we are pretty satisfied with the efficacy and the transparency of the system. But still we are in a debate. Like we are a progressing country, and even the word, I think the in future the, the it is to how to go about. I think online elections would be more appropriate and more convenient, and it will even increase the percentage of voting. If every country opts for online voting, a person who is not able to come to the polling booth, but he has the uh, zeal and just, and he has opinion to express, because voting is the only way we express our opinions on the performance of the government or our political thoughts, or it is a this is the it kind of testing the past government. So online election is the way forward, as what I see. Online election in India, we have postal ballots. Postal ballots is for those persons, like a person who are deployed in army or paramilitary forces in like places. They can't have access to their polling booths of their where they are registered voters. So if we allow the postal ballots, why not online elections? If
So
online
there's a
elections,
difference. I can
yeah,
explain that. Yeah,
yes.
there is a difference, a very big difference.
Hmm. So if we have the online election, we can preserve the secrecy of voting, and we can have a transparent and efficacious system. I think the way forward to sustain the democracy is a online voting.
So, I mean, I can talk about that when the questions come to me, but, and I can explain why online elections are a problem. But before I continue, I had a question. So, who has developed the software that you are proposing, the mobile software that you are proposing? So is it is it a particular company, or is it developed, as a specific project for you, or?
So as of now, we intend to hold these elections by a retired Honorable Chief Justice of a High Court, so that
No,
the
but I mean, the software you are proposing to use, you were saying you tested some software.
yes.
So where is that software? Did it come
So
from?
we hired it has been outsourced. We hired an agency, and they have developed it. So as of now, we are keeping that agency secret for having it free and fair election, just to have a level playing field for all stakeholders.
So, it may not be considered level because you have hired them, right? So it would not be, it would not be considered a level playing field because you know who they are, but the rest of the people don't, right? So,
So
and also there are lots of, so anyway, I will come to that maybe when we come to the specific questions, I can inform you of what the thinking is among experts in the field. And for example, why the US does not do large scale internet voting, for example, why the European countries have backed off. I gave a talk, I was invited by CDAC, by the Indian scientists, to talk about remote voting for NRIs in elections. This was a few years ago. And I spoke at length at that meeting. They had invited everybody, they were planning to do it. They had invited people, from all over, like the Aadhaar card and lots of other representatives. And it's just no way that you can make it secure today. And if you look at the qualities that you require of an election, we are quite far from making it secure. And it's different from, for example, banking. So, I have a lot of questions. People say the whole world, like, you are saying that now the next thing, India is a forward thinking country. And as we progress, we want to go online and do things that are more convenient. But it's very different from online banking. So, for example, with online banking, all banks and financial institutions are insured to make sure that the losses, and they all make losses due to online fraud, and that insurance covers their losses. Now, what happens when you vote? If your vote is secret, nobody knows whether your vote was changed by the software, by an error, intentionally, the program was written to change your vote. Nobody knows because it's secret. Even you don't know what they received. And so there is no way of doing what in a banking system you might do, which is you might say, ki, I didn't do that, wo maine nahi nikala, that I didn't put that money in, I didn't take it out, where did it go? And the banks can trace it. The banks have rules about you cannot withdraw your money when it comes across international wire transfer for a few days and all. That's for this reason, that if there are concerns of this kind, then they can be addressed. And additionally, banks and financial institutions have insurance. Voters don't have insurance. Voters cannot even prove that their vote was changed. So it's actually a very big deal. And normally also, any voting systems, we ask that they be open, that their design be open, that the code be open source, and that everybody knows what the code is doing. Even though in spite of that, we might not have a secure system because you don't know what the code was downloaded on your mobile. You don't know if there is anything on your mobile that will change the vote. You don't know if the software itself will change the vote. And, I can send you a link to sort of a recent presentation in India by somebody who described how he just took somebody's phone in his hand, and in a few seconds, he was able to make changes so that he could see all the OTPs that the phone was receiving. He could put on the mic on the phone. He can make a recording. So he had control of the phone and what was happening with the phone. So it's actually something that we consistently, and you can see it all on my webpage, on any expert's webpage.
My question would be, see, in India, we have progressed from ballot paper to EVMs. The efficacy of EVM is being questioned by the opposition parties who do the elections. And still, the developed countries like US, they are still sticking to ballot papers.
That's correct.
I had been, as a lawyer, I've seen election petition being decided on the ground that particular persons, they have voted in two constituencies. In Indian election laws, a person can be a voter in one constituency.
Yes.
But the EVMs, the efficacy of EVMs in having the secrecy of ballot was tested in that election petition, and the Honorable High Court has come to the conclusion that it has been proved through EVMs that these persons have cast their vote in two constituencies. So resultantly, the election was invalidated.
So I'm not sure how does this. So this is a very different situation from internet voting.
Okay.
And in fact, the Supreme Court has required VVPAT from all EVMs because the counting is not trusted, right? So now India is using VVPATs everywhere because the internal counting is not trusted. So you're right that actually when you vote physically, you can actually control who is voting, and you can actually, if you have good records, you should be able to prevent people from voting twice. And that is not a function of how you count the votes. How you count the votes is different from how you verify whether the correct person has voted or not. Those are two separate processes. So those two processes can be also done separately. They can be managed separately. So when you say about EVMs, so yes, in fact, one of the good things about EVMs has been that they have prevented ballot stuffing. So they prevent people from putting lots of, you could come with dacoits coming and taking, with rifles and just taking over entire booths. And that's harder with EVM because it has a time between the votes. But that doesn't mean that the counting happens correctly. So when it's an electronic system, and this is like all over, it's not just me who's saying it. I mean, Mark Lindemann, who you originally invited, would say the same thing. A number of people, and I can point you to reports signed by like hundreds of computer scientists from all over the world about electronic counting in particular, just electronic counting and what the problems with it are. And the thing with EVMs is that they are separate. So it is a little bit harder to rig them than if you're voting online. If you're voting online, you just need one piece of malware, right? Or you have some error in the code. I mean, when a private person writes the code, you don't even know if the code is doing what it's supposed to do. And the thing is that so if you look at, for example, the Volkswagen cars, right? So they went through they have software. All cars have software these days, and they know when they are being tested for environmental pollution. And when they are being tested, then they behave differently from when they are not being tested. So software can do this. The reason I bring about the cars is to say that software can do this. Software knows when it's being tested. It can figure out, intelligently written software can figure out when it's being tested. And in any case, there are so many different variations. If you have a lot of people voting, you might test the software for 100 votes, but you might have thousands of people voting. So you don't have a way for knowing how software behaves. So generally we advise that, and it's not just me, I want to say we, because it's scientists across the world who advise that you should have some backup way of confirming your vote. So it doesn't mean that, so that's why you have VVPAT, for example, for Indian EVMs. And it doesn't mean you have to count the whole EVM, you don't have to count all the paper. But if you have a record of the paper from which the total was computed, then you can just audit the paper. You can just look at a few samples and just count and say, yes, this looks right. And there are ways of doing that, statistical ways also. Some of them are simple. So VVPATs, they're doing that right now. So they're doing these batch audits. They may not be doing enough of them, but they're doing a large number in terms of a flat rate. It may not be enough to predict small margin elections, and they're ignoring when the tallies are differing by saying that the mock poll, we forgot to subtract the mock poll, which may not be, but I don't want to go into EVMs. Did we lose Mr. Brar?
Probably he's about to come. No problem, we can continue because this is
recorded. So this is the main concern that we typically have, is that when it's electronic, it's not transparent, because you can't see what's going on. And because so much of the world seems to run on software, we think that software works. But as I pointed out to you, all banks have insurance for this kind of fraud that happens. And in that case, at least we know what's in our accounts and we can make a complaint. But when we vote, we don't know if our vote was received correctly. And we can't phone up and say, call up the bar council and say, hey, did you receive my vote for, Manmohan Singh or Advani or whoever? And because we can't do that, we don't have a way of confirming what's correct. Also, when we have privately written code and it's written without being examined, there might be just errors in the code that are not intentional. And that may not show up till you actually use it. And you may not even know that there was a mistake. That's the whole thing. That you don't even know there's a mistake because voters can't tell you how they voted. So you don't know what the true count should be.
Yes.
So this is why I would not recommend, and especially for a statutory body, I think, so that's the difference. So I think you mentioned, Mr. Brar mentioned the Rotary Club International and said they are holding their elections online. So these are all personal clubs. Students hold their elections online. University students hold their elections online. So that's different from a statutory body. Is a very different. Even associations like like, for example, the Cryptographer Association or the Computer Science Association, even those folks, those are not statutory bodies. So there is a difference. I think a statutory body has a larger responsibility to the citizens and to governance and so on.
Yes, Purvi. But in India, due to the recent amendment in the Companies Act, so in the annual general meetings of the companies also, the AGM, the recent Companies Act, it has included that you should also give an option of e-voting. So there should be an online voting also. So there should be an option, but I'll come to that question later on. So I'll just put forward a series of questions to you concerning the topic in hand.
Sure. Yes.
If I could just put forward this first question, that when we refer to online voting, does it also include voting by mobile softwares?
Yes. So online voting means any voting that uses the internet. So it also includes email, because email uses the internet. It also includes fax, because generally fax is also sent these days. A lot of it is sent over the internet. So anything that uses the internet is considered online voting. And so mobile voting would also be online voting.
Yes, thank you. And the second question being, all over the world, there has been a lot of tests. As we know, an example of Estonia is there, that since the year 2005, they've been working on the online voting perspective. Initially, although they have been hugely successful with regard to the percentage of people who are opting for online voting, initially there was only 3% of the population who opted for it. Although the population is very less, we know it's about 10 or 15 lakhs of the entire country. But now, presently, I think so in 2018, there's been a stat whereby around 44% people in Estonia, they've opted for online voting. How do you see online voting being taken in different countries all over the world? And recently, there's also been a trend in Norway. When Norway, although it has failed in Norway, and Norway has pulled out of it, but in Australia, in Wales, they've been working on this. How do you see online voting in an international perspective?
So actually, you mentioned Australia. So actually, the Australian system was hacked. The hack has been demonstrated. It's actually not hard to hack these systems. There have been papers about it. So the thing is, you have, on the one hand, you might have somebody who insists on holding an online election, and they have invested in the technology and so on, and they are going to do it till there is pushback. But you see, for example, even with EVMs, there was resistance to the use of VVPATs by the government, by the ECI, till the court stepped in and said you need VVPAT. So you see in Europe also that they're doing all these trials, but then they are pulling back. And they're pulling back because then they realize that there is a serious security problem. And the people realize that there is a serious security problem. It is true that it is convenient to vote online, right? Everything is convenient to do online. You don't have to walk somewhere. It's easier for the people who are holding the election as well. But the thing is that the security is very, very low, right? So, I mean, you are seeing about all kinds of issues that arise with when you do things mobile or you do things on the computer. And as I said, with voting, you don't know if there was a problem. I think that is the main thing, that you don't know if there was a problem. You don't have a way of knowing. So the voter can have a very good experience voting. The user interface is nice, everything is easy to use, but they don't really know that their vote was counted correctly. They don't have a way of knowing it. That's the thing. So that's the main concern. Now, you have questions about, genuine questions about, in COVID, what can you do? There are issues of voters who may not be able to come to the polls and who want to vote. That's what Mr. Brar mentioned earlier, that maybe there is somebody who is sick or older person, or somebody who has a handicap, has a disability and cannot make it to poll. And so you can have exceptions for people who really need to vote in a certain way, and you can allow them to vote. Even so, in the US, we do not recommend even for those voters to vote online. We say they may vote from home and they can send in a paper ballot, but voting online is really limited for this reason. So I also, maybe we go with your questions rather than I just wander around. So maybe I'll take your next question then.
Yes, Dr. Vora,
I'm sorry for interjecting.
Yes.
As an expert, so what is the most foolproof way of voting Is it the traditional ballot paper election or the EVMs or online? Everybody has, kind of.
So there is a technique known as end-to-end independently verifiable voting, which is a category of votes, not just the things I've been working on, but it's not just what I have done. And in that, there is a way for the voter to confirm some kind of code, that confirms how they voted. And there is a voting system called Helios, which has been used. It's available online. You can set it up to vote. It has been used by universities for students to vote. And if you want to vote online, then maybe you should use an end-to-end independently verifiable system. So how that system works is you vote online, and the vote gets encrypted. Okay, so it's so nobody else can know what it is. And then you can test the encryption. You can say, did you encrypt it correctly? You can ask, and then it will show you that it encrypted correctly. You can use some other software to check that. And then it goes to a bulletin board and it's posted out there. The code is on the bulletin board for anyone to see. So the voter can go later and say, ki mera code is there. So mera vote is there, and it is exactly what code I was given on my machine. So I know it reached you. It reached the election system correctly on the way it was not changed. And then you can have a software that computes the votes, the election result correctly from all of these coded votes. And you can check that as well using independently written software. So it requires some kind of engagement, by your association or something to figure out all these things. And there are problems with that, which is basically if there's a virus on your computer, it can replace your vote. See, the computer comes between you and everything that's happening, right? Everything, your computer bolo, mobile bolo, jo bhi wo computational device rehte. So whatever vote or anything you're entering, it's going through this computer. Now that computer can change it. This is the main challenge, that computer can just change your instruction, make it something else. And in an election, typically there is enough interest that somebody might be interested in doing this. So that was the other question that I sent over email, is that maybe, I don't want to kind of prevent you from proceeding with a democratic process, which I understand, as you said earlier, that's also important. And that also sort of, as lawyers, as much about its importance, right? So I don't want to stop you from the democratic process either. But I think that something like this sets up a very dangerous precedent, in the sense that, you might do it in an emergency, and if you do it kind of without other people knowing, maybe, but you still have to trust that that software was written correctly. There is still the issue of, and I would think that there could be a challenge from your bar association, bar council members, association members, that you were in cahoots with the person who wrote the software, right? So because they don't know how it's doing the counting. So this could be a question that comes up, because it's not open, the code has not been reviewed by any experts or anything. It's not, so these are things that are concerns from just using sort of something independent. There is the Helios voting system online that you can consider using, but even that, the computer can always change your vote before it goes in. With the Helios system, there is a little bit of testing that helps you figure out if it did or not. A very alert voter can catch that there's a problem, but they can't prove that there's a problem. So then what happens is you get all these people saying, oh, this is a bad system, it changed my vote, and maybe it didn't change the vote, right? So then they're just saying it for kind of mass benefit. And like you said, it's always the loser who has a concern, right? The winner, even if they suspect that the system is no good, they will not challenge it, because they are like, Rehne do, ho gaya, sab theek, why do you want to go in there? And this is because, if you remember the BJP, so it is Subramanian Swamy, who went with a pill to the Supreme Court and got the VVPATs. And that was because it was a Congress at that time. And for example, it was, I think, the Chidambaram election that everybody got very concerned about. And so it is the loser that. Now that the BJP is in power, it is the Congress that is challenging EVMs, or the other parties. Now, to the credit of the Congress, recently, even when it won in Punjab, it still didn't, was Punjab or Haryana, it didn't back off from still questioning EVMs. So I'm just saying that I agree with Mr. Brad that it's usually the loser who will be concerned. But the idea is you want an election where even the loser is satisfied, right? That's what you want in a democracy, in a peaceful transfer of power. You want even the loser to say, "Ha, bhi process to theek tha." This is the thing that you want to actually really want.
Yes, Purvi.
You're right. Any vibrant democracy can only sustain if there are free and fair elections and with a level playing field for all the stakeholders. But how the discourse would end. So, what is the best mode of having the elections vis-a-vis
So the
the?
best way to have it in person using an end-to-end voting system, because with an end-to-end voting system, even if all the software is bad, the people counting are bad, the people can figure that out. So that is the best way of
So
voting.
in India, we have seen the dead people voting through the ballot paper. People who are not
So no, you can do it. So
their
you can
votes are not weeded out. They are still
no,
in the
so you
records
can.
as voters, but they have passed away. So those we see the
That is a
instances and
different. But that is the registration process is wrong. It's not because they're voting on paper. It is because you are not maintaining voter rolls properly, or the voter rolls are not available in different. You can communicate the voter rolls electronically.
because in India, there is a literacy, there is unawareness, and there are election rules. To have a vote deleted or to have it transferred or replaced to another constituency, there are election rules. If a person is dead, the disgruntled people take advantage of dead people. They
No, but that
in,
is not related to you. That's not
so
related to
in the
the person is
if
dead.
there
That
is
can happen.
if there is a
That can,
online voting and it is based on biometrics, I don't think anybody can impersonate for someone. So the
the computer
futuristic,
can change your vote. The computer can put in some more votes.
but
And
Purvi, how to
biometrics, Aadhaar,
in,
biometrics are also not.
see
And,
in
yes.
traditional ballot paper voting also we find the elections are being rigged, not to the extent of kind of having a drastic change in the result, but still
So, Mr.
people indulge it.
Mr.
So
Brar, that's why I am saying not just paper, but you have an end-to-end voting system. You can vote. So, for example, doing EVMs with proper rules for challenging if the VVPAT is not correct, which we don't have in India right now, and proper audits could be a secure election. Okay,
really,
but the issue is that if the EVM does not print the correct vote in the VVPAT, right now in India, it is, if you challenge it, you are actually you are liable. So if it actually happened that you got a wrong VVPAT in India, if you challenge it and the officials find that the EVM is not reproducing the error, then you actually can go to jail for that because it's considered a wrong complaint. Now the problem is that's not fair to the voter, because it could be that the voter thing was wrong. So since you're asking me about what is the best way to vote, I'm telling you that this most secure ways to vote are when there is a voter, what is known as a voter verified paper trail, which is that there's either a ballot that the voter filled up, or if you have something like EVM, something that the voter verifies. Yes, this is correct. This is a correct representation of my vote. And then that is audited. As I said earlier, that there are ways to make sure that the outcome is correct. So that is the best way of voting. Now, if you can't be there in person, you could do this to some degree over mail, over the postal system. Now, I don't know during this COVID problem, I don't know what is with the Indian postal system and
Purvi,
how
then
they have it.
we only have two modes of voting. Those registered voters who are in army or in paramilitary forces, they exercise their suffrage through postal ballots. But postal ballot is again the secrecy of vote is maintained. It is you can never come to know who has voted for whom. But postal vote is counted. Similarly, in traditional voting, you may kind of sign your ballot paper and put votes. But in future we are going ahead in progressive societies. I think the online mode has to be there.
It's
People
not
in
secure. You're not able to find it. It's
yeah,
like
but
saying that
it's for
Newton's laws of motion should
no, no,
not
no, no.
hold. To
So
say,
I have a lot of trust in people, experts like you. I look
okay,
forward
good,
to experts like you
good, okay.
You see the percentage of voting in US, it is decimal low as compared to the developed countries and developing countries, or rather, uh, uh, you
That's a very
say,
good thing. That's
yeah,
a very good thing
because
about the developing
this,
countries, but
this,
that
this
doesn't,
is
that's
this
a
is
progressive
again
thing.
this is again transversity of the democratic process, that people don't go exercise their right to suffrage. They don't go and vote. This is again not good for the democracy.
That's right. But there is no proof
If
that going internet improves this. So, Mr. Brar,
so,
I may tell you that you might think that in your mind, but there have been studies, and I can point you to them, that do not show an improvement in the number of voters if when locations go online. There are studies that show that.
no, I'm just
So
talking about. So,
while you
so
might believe that,
no,
you
Purvi,
might, yes.
we have the US model. US is going to election in November. So they US and people
Yes,
in US, they have access to computer and smartphones. Everybody has.
but they're not going to
It,
vote
it,
in.
it is
They're
not like
not voting on the.
in India, that people are located in remote places. They are illiterate and they don't do not have access to internet facilities. In USA, it is so. Everybody has access to internet, and everybody is aware. So why in US the voting is so low? So if the online voting takes place, a person who is on a night shift, or a person who is not available in his constituency to go and put his vote physically. So I think to sustain the democracy, to have a rational, majoritarian, kind of opinion on the performance of the past government or the aspiration of the challenger, we need to have some kind of a futuristic online voting. So the youngsters or the infirm and the old, they are not. They have least concern for the elections, but election is the only way to test the government's policies. So
Mr.
how the democracy will survive?
If I could just interject, in principle, I think in principle, we all three agree that voting should be there and the maximum of participation. And the concern is whether online voting is secure or not. So I'll just jump on to my next question, Purvi, just not taking much of your time. That if an institution thinks of holding an online election, like you said earlier, that you have to see as to whether the person who wishes to influence your elections through any hacking or any other means, is he willing to put in that much of an effort? So what all consideration points should be there in an institution's mind before going forward with an online election?
So first of all, the code itself and the program itself, all of it should be open source so that people can look at the code. You can have experts look at the code, because you can't have somebody who just writes the code, the software for a particular election, right? Because it's not, it's for an important task. So you can't have code that's written by a private party that nobody else has looked at, because that's immediately a problem, a vulnerability. And it could be a vulnerability that is unintentional. So it could be something that has an unintentional problem. It's also not transparent, right? In the sense that it's the code, it's the software that's going to compute the total. So it's not transparent if it's written by some sort of for a one time thing. So for example, if you see what the students use, called Helios, the system that is being used by a lot of students, there, that software is open source. You can look at it. It's been around for a long time. People have looked at it. There have been some problems that have been found. They have been fixed. If so, so that is one thing that you that you need to be careful about, right? The second thing is that it should be some way that the voter can verify the total. So it should be something that is, for example, end-to-end verifiable. So if you want, I can send you a link to a report, 300-page report, which describes why internet voting doesn't work. And at the very least, if you want to do internet voting, it should be done using an end-to-end verifiable system. And in fact, though end-to-end verifiable systems are not secure. So in my talk for the Indian government, I said very clearly that internet voting is not secure, and I don't think that the Indian government should allow NRIs voting on the internet. Okay, so I said that, and I mean, I don't understand fully sort of and that's why I wrote that in the email, is I don't understand fully the politics of the Bar Council and what is the interest in maybe changing the outcome, or how, like, what is the investment that somebody might or might not make, because I'm not familiar with the Bar Council.
Dr.
So
Purvi,
that is something. But if somebody wants to change it, they can change it if it's on.
no, we are not here to change anything, or we are here to provide a transparent,
No, no, no.
transparent and
So
mode
Akash,
of election.
he's referring, like, if, let's say if a third person wishes to influence, how much of an effort is he willing to put in? So how much investment is he making in the election, and how much of an effort he willing to put in to get into the system and change the outcome?
So that was my question, because you are not a government body. So to a government body like like a local government or something like that, where everybody votes, I would not recommend internet elections. But you are not such a body, yet you are a statutory body. So you do have powers, and so your elections are important. But given that there's this COVID problem and stuff, so perhaps you think that we are a happy body. We don't have much conflict. Nobody will try to change the votes. Everybody will go along with what happens. Then perhaps you can do it this one time. The danger is that you do it once, then it happens forever.
Before the elections are being supervised and controlled and regulated by an independent person. The Bar Council has no say in it. A retired Honorable Chief Justice is holding the elections. He will have all the control and everything. So there is no question of anybody
But the
controlling the
software
elections.
itself, the software itself, he has not written the software, right? With due respect, I actually appreciate that you're doing this, because it's very cool to have somebody like an independent party who is trusted and has had a very well regarded career who will do it. So that is immediately really good. But the point is that it's not like they are counting the votes. The votes are counted by the program.
And Purvi, if I could just put forward this question to you, that let's say if there is a third party who wishes to influence the elections, this kind of election which is conducted through a mobile software, how much of an effort will he be required to put in, and what would he be required to do to get into the system to change the outcome?
Okay, so one thing that that he would be required to do would be to get on either on your mobile phone, or get to figure out what's going on your mobile phone, such as use OTP and stuff like that. And that can be done, and I can send you a video describing how that can be done, by getting your phone in their hand for 15 seconds. Now that means that's a lot of phones that they have to get in their hands, right? It's not like, if a lot of people are voting, it's not like you took 5-7 votes in their hands and you got it. But the thing is, they can also deploy, so actually the part that they would want to attack would be that software itself, and they could do it online. So generally speaking, when you run something like this, there are always people sniffing around, right? So there'll be thousands of bots, thousands of malware that is sniffing around your phone to try to get in your phone, as well as the software that is running it. So if somebody wants to change it, that's the level at which they have to change it. So they would either try to hack into that program, which has to be online, because it's collecting the votes. You can't say it's not online. So it is on the internet. So they would have to get into that program. I would say that might be the best way to do it, would be to get onto that program and change it. Best way, meaning that's what somebody wants to do, it might find easiest.
And how big of a technology expert or expert in malware do you require a person to be to get into the mind of the software?
So if a student has taken maybe 1 or 2 computer security courses, they can do it. Like, there are lots of people who will say that a student in my class who has finished my class can do it. So it's not a deep expert like somebody who has a PhD or something.
So normal student from any IT institute, 1 or 2 years into his...
Who has taken a computer security class. So maybe not 1 or 2 years, maybe in the 4th year.
Who's taken a computer security class, he is eligible to hack into the software and change the
And
outcome.
there are a lot of high school students in the US we see, and I think it is also true in India, but maybe less so, is that we see students in high schools in the US who can do this. They just teach it to themselves because they like the internet.
So our voters are not high school students of US. So
No, they may not be able to vote, but that doesn't mean they can't hack.
so it is on a lighter note. I'm just asking.
Huh?
And
On in the
I
lighter
didn't get the
sense,
question. I didn't get
on
the
the lighter
question.
sense, I'm just saying. So, so the crux of our discussion is that India is way ahead of US in terms of holding free and fair election and having the larger majority of the population to vote. So whereas in US it lacks behind in terms of percentage of voting, and how I would love to see experts like you to develop something a very foolproof online mode so we can
Mr.
sustain
Brar,
the.
let me tell you something. Let me tell you something that for the last 15 years, I have been working on voting. So I understand that democracy is important. And I understand I have devoted my career to voting technology. Yes? So you are right. Yes, we want to do the most we can to count votes, but we also want to prevent folks from getting in the way. And we also want a transparent system. Computer programs are not transparent because we don't know how they count. Okay. And yes, indeed, India has a much better turnout. And as somebody who was born in India, I am very proud of the Indian, how many people show up to vote. I'm very proud that people actually take EVMs to small places, like one person living in a national park, and there'll be 3 people who go with an EVM to get them to vote. I'm very proud of those things because I don't see that kind of coming to the voter elsewhere. So there are a lot of good things about India, and so, but this is not about India and US. With due respect, the security thing is not about India.
I honestly hope people like you have contributed like, their life about holding these elections, and I'm sure there'll be time then you will come up with something foolproof, and I'm sure
There is a combination that is foolproof, but it's not
every vote will
something you
count.
want. See,
One day there'll be time everybody can vote, and every vote will count. Whether a person is on a kind of in ICU having intravenous drugs, or somebody who's on a
so Mr. Brar,
vacation,
I
or
said that already. For that patient, you can allow them to vote on the internet. I'm just saying make exceptions. Don't allow everyone to vote on the internet. If if only if only 2 or 3 or 5 or 10% of your population is voting on the internet, then whoever wants to change the outcome will not bother because it's too small a count for them to bother. But if everybody is voting on the internet, then it is worthwhile. Then the adversary will want to, because with some malware, they can do it. So that is one thing. The second thing is that you can, as I said, you can look at your own election, and if you feel that, we don't think somebody is going to bother to get into the program to change it. Ours is not a local government election or where everybody votes. Maybe, like the Computer Science Association votes online. The International Association of Cryptologic Research votes online. They're not statutory bodies, but they still represent professionals. So you could take it from that perspective. Like, we are a lawyer, a body of lawyers, and we are not the general citizens, and we are going to hold our elections online because people are not going to try to hack it, and the
yeah,
convenience is there.
because I
So you
behold
can go like that. You
my
can go
my
like
my fraternity in high team, because they were on the main god of freedom struggle. They won the freedom for this country, and they are called learned, and they were heroes
my
of valor.
grandfather spent my grandfather spent 2 years in jail.
I don't think
My grandfather spent 2 years in jail and provided a lot of support. He used to feed freedom fighters in the night in his restaurant at the risk of being arrested. And he did spend 2 years in jail. So I come from such a family too.
Same.
privileged to have you with us today.
Sure.
So, Mr. Brar, because we're over time, and if you could just give the ceremonial vote of thanks to Dr.
Sure.
Puri.
You're welcome.
So it is indeed my proud privilege to have such eminent person on our webinar today, Dr. Purvi Bora. And I'm so glad and proud to know that she's from a family who has contributed towards the freedom of this great nation. And we all, Indian diaspora, either we are sitting here or you're sitting abroad, we share the common heritage and common feeling towards nationality and the ethos our parents and our seniors have contributed in building this nation. And thank you very much, Dr. Purvi Vora. It is great to have you with us. And I would like to continue this discourse, not today, in some other
Sure.
time. But it's an
Sure.
interesting topic
Sure.
since the democracy is at
And
stake.
also, it's a topic that all of us care about.
Yes.
So we tend to get kind of passionate when we talk about it. That's because it's such an important topic.
Thank
So
you very much.
yeah. So, and all the best to you for your elections. I think it's a good thing that you are trying to do the election in spite of all the constraints. So, wish you all the very best. Maybe you can wait 6 more months and then maybe you can do it in person. I had to get my last one